After ending last season with a record low crop of just 41 million boxes, the 2022-23 citrus season began with yet another setback when Hurricane Ian formed in the Caribbean. On September 28, the Category 4 hurricane made landfall on Florida's west coast in Lee County before slowly marching its way across the heart of the Florida citrus industry. With winds as high as 155 miles per hour, catastrophic storm surge along the west coast, and more than 20 inches of rain causing major flooding across the state, Ian proved to be the third costliest storm ever to hit the state of Florida. And just 6 short weeks later, while still trying to clean up from Ian, another storm headed our way. Hurricane Nicole made landfall on the east coast just south of Vero Beach, bringing additional rain and wind. It was estimated that between the two storms, the citrus industry had suffered nearly $700 million in damages. It would have been easy and even understandable if growers across the state had thrown in the towel after yet another blow. Instead, they continued to persevere, and so Mutual got to work in an effort to assist growers in moving forward, starting with what is traditionally the season kickoff crop estimate luncheon. This year's event shifted focus and became a hurricane recovery and information meeting. More than 300 Florida citrus growers and industry supporters turned out in Zolfo Springs to hear from legislative and agency representatives about the assistance and support available to aid in the recovery process. One recovery assistance tool that Mutual worked closely with the USDA to develop leading up to the meeting was the inclusion of cost share funding for IPCs, or tree bags, under the NRCS EQIP program. The overwhelming attitude at this meeting was one of determination and resilience. Rather than "we give up," we heard a lot of "what do we need to clean up and get back into production." Senator Marco Rubio, Congressman Scott Franklin, and Congresswoman Kat Cammack, all staunch supporters of the Florida citrus industry, also heard those sentiments as they had traveled to Zolfo Springs to tour storm-damaged groves prior to the meeting. Seeing and hearing directly from impacted growers allowed these leaders to better support our industry in the efforts to secure further disaster recovery assistance. By December, Congressman Franklin, along with Congressman Darren Soto and 15 other bipartisan members of the Florida delegation, had submitted a letter to the U.S. House Committee on Appropriations stressing the importance of Florida's citrus industry in the immense challenges presented by Hurricanes Ian and Nicole. Our primary focus in D.C. has been on disaster recovery. That's not all we've been up to in our nation's capital. We teamed up with our counterparts from both California and Texas to work on several federal priorities, including annual appropriations and the inclusion of citrus in the 2023 Farm Bill. On the appropriations front, we continue to be successful in securing funding to assist in the fight against citrus greening from both the Citrus Health Response Program, or CHIRP, and the USDA MAC program. These dollars have been critical to continuing the work of the Florida Department of Agriculture on clean budwood, germplasm, and disease detection, as well as the continued development of the Citrus Research and Field Trials, or CRAFT program. This year, we were able to secure an additional $7.5 million in federal funding. As Congress begins to work on writing the 2023 Farm Bill, Mutual has been busy sharing our story and priorities. In addition to meetings in D.C., several growers and staff members attended a Farm Bill listening session in Newberry, Florida, hosted by House Committee on Agriculture Chairman G.T. Thompson of Pennsylvania and Florida Committee members Congresswoman Cammack and Congressman Darren Soto. At this listening session, we shared 4 priorities for Florida citrus in this Farm Bill. Our first request to Congress is for the continued funding of the Emergency Citrus Disease Research and Development Trust Fund, which has historically provided $25 million per year for citrus greening research through the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. This funding was initially established in the 2014 Farm Bill and continued through the 2018 legislation. Much of the work done at the University of Florida Citrus Research and Educational Center in Lake Alfred is supported by NIFA funding allocated through the Farm Bill. Additionally, during the writing of the 2023 Farm Bill, Florida Citrus Mutual will be seeking much-needed reforms in the TAP program, the elimination or modification of AGI requirements for participation in federal programs, as well as inclusion of citrus acreage in the Conservation Reserve Program. In addition to meetings and hearings, we also help strengthen our relationships in D.C. by bringing back an old tradition and hosting the Taste of Sunshine reception, along with California Citrus Mutual and Texas Citrus Mutual. Nearly 100 legislators, staffers, and guests attended the event, learning more about the issues affecting the domestic citrus industry. The states also worked together on the reinstatement of juice content requirements on imported grapefruit. following a sudden withdrawal of the requirements by the USDA during the 2021-2022 season. Months of data collection, conference calls, and in-person meetings culminated with meetings in Washington, D.C., with Administrator Bruce Summers from USDA's Agricultural Marketing Service and Julie Callahan, Assistant U.S. Trade Representative for Agricultural Affairs and Commodity Policy, to discuss the importance of rescinding the patch for immediate assistance while a long-term solution to the lack of national standards is developed. The temporary reinstatement of requirements for this season was certainly a victory, and we continue to work with our partners across the country to develop a permanent solution. While we've been busy in Washington, D.C., we've also been hard at work in Tallahassee. With our new Director of Government Affairs, Landon Hoffman, leading the charge this legislative session, Mutual remained engaged with leadership and key members of the Florida House and Senate. Landon, why don't you update us on what we've been working on in Tallahassee?
Mutual was called to testify before the State Senate Ag Committee on Hurricane Ian and other industry priorities. We worked closely with legislators, including Senators Ben Albritton, as well as many others from the House and Senate. We also worked tirelessly with our newly elected Commissioner of Agriculture, Wilton Simpson, on several ag-related bills that were passed into law this year. HB 1279 created the Florida Farm Team Card for farmers, growers, and ranchers to use for sales tax-exempt purchases, reducing red tape and modernizing the current burdensome process. SB 264, the Secure Florida Act, restricts foreign control of ag lands and lands near critical infrastructure. And HB 7063 prohibits counties from levying any special assessments on lands classified as agriculture unless revenues are pledged for debt services. Along with these key pieces of legislation, our state legislators, Commissioner Simpson and Governor DeSantis, continue to show their unwavering support for Florida's signature ag industry through record funding. This year's budget included more than $65 million, with $30 million going towards the CRAFT program. For that, we say thank you to Senator Albritton and all of our supporters in Tallahassee.
Thanks, Landon. And speaking of CRAFT, the program has more than exceeded expectations. With a waiting list of growers looking to participate in large-scale field trials being funded through the CRAFT Foundation, it truly is a bright spot in the industry's battle against HLB. Tamara, give us a rundown of where CRAFT stands and what the future of the program holds.
Thanks, Matt. Since its inception in 2019, the CRAFT program has funded more than 10,000 acres of new tree plantings and an additional 9,000 acres of existing tree therapies trials. 2023 promises to see those numbers continue to expand, with anticipated funding for an additional 2,000 acres of new tree plantings and nearly 90,000 acres of additional existing tree therapies trials. This program highlights one of the biggest successes of the 2022-23 season, the approval of 2 oxytetracycline hydrochloride products. Florida Citrus Mutual provided support and guidance to both registrants as they worked with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services and the Environmental Protection Agency to secure their 24C Special Local Needs labels. While not the ultimate cure for greening, oxytetracycline, plant growth regulators, and other therapies deployed through the CRAFT program provide the promise of stabilization and recovery for our industry. But don't just take my word for it. Let's hear from Florida Citrus Mutual President and grower Glenn Beck.
Early trial work from the injection of oxytetracycline has shown promising results, and we are hopeful that while it's still not a silver bullet, this is the Band-Aid that we need to stop the bleed. Early grower testimonials continue to reinforce the idea that OTC is having a positive effect on trees. We didn't get here overnight, and it will take time for trees to truly start to recover, but it appears we now have tools to successfully grow citrus in a greening endemic environment until an ultimate solution can be found. To that end, Florida Citrus Mutual continues to work with multiple agencies and entities to support additional research and development of greening-resistant or tolerant trees. We've worked hand in hand with groups like SoilSEA to push CRISPR technology out into grower field trials and hope to see those up and running soon. We also continue to support the University of Florida, USDA, and others as they look at conventional breeding of a resistant tree. Throughout the past year, many of Mutual members and board members and staff were hard at work sharing Florida's citrus story with agency and elected officials as well as the media. From roundtables from Senator Rick Scott and Congressman Scott Franklin to grove tours with new U.S. Representative Corey Mills and U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack, as well as interviews on Fox News, ABC, AccuWeather, NPR, The Wall Street Journal, and more, talking about the impacts of Hurricanes Ian and Nicole, record low crops and ongoing battle with citrus greening, we made sure our story was heard. To each of you who took part in the interviews this year, thank you. And thank you to our board of directors. We recognize that everyone is doing more with less these days, so the time, energy, and effort that you devote to ensuring the continued success and viability of the industry is greatly appreciated. To retiring board member Fran Becker, thank you for all of your many years of service. To our new guys, David Howard and Wade Simmons, welcome aboard. And to Matt, thank you for your leadership. It's been a tough year, no doubt, but you have done a remarkable job leading the way.
Thanks, Glenn. And a special thank you to Glenn. It has been an honor to work with you in your role as president over the past 2 years. Your willingness to step up and show up in whatever capacity we've asked of you has been greatly appreciated. You've supported our organization and our staff in ways that made weathering the storms, both literally and figuratively, much easier. Speaking of our staff, Mutual wouldn't be what it is without our outstanding staff. Much like everyone else in the industry, our numbers have gotten smaller, but the importance of the work that Mutual does continues to get greater. To our full-timers, Melanie Burns, Landon Hoffman, and Kevin Matheny, as well as our consultants, Francis Lane, Rusty Weigel, and Tamara Wood, thank you for always giving 110% to ensure the continued success of this organization and this industry. 75 years ago, growers Lat Maxey, Barney Kilgore, C.C. Commander, J.A. Griffin, and James C. Morton proposed the formation of Florida Citrus Mutual after struggling to make a profit from their citrus operations. On June 15, 1948, Mutual's bylaws were approved, making Mutual an organization dedicated strictly to the well-being of Florida citrus growers. A lot of things have changed in the Florida citrus industry since 1948. Our numbers are smaller, both in terms of growers and boxes, and our challenges are greater, from disease and natural disasters to development and regulations. But one thing remains the same. Florida Citrus Mutual remains committed to serving the Florida citrus grower yesterday, today, and tomorrow.